Nice to see everybody's face, and nice to have an opportunity to engage in what I hope to be a rich discussion after I spend a little time giving some background. Before I start too, I want to acknowledge Happy New Year. In the Jewish tradition, we're well over 5,000 years and counting, and so Happy Jewish New Year to everybody. I will be talking about my experience a little bit. This is a two-part series. They're not necessarily connected in a way that requires you to do one end or the other to do either one, but today I'm going to focus more on what I call being an engaged citizen and the more general responsibility we all each have, in my opinion. And speaking in my opinion, everything I say now and everything I'll be saying for the rest of this time, and of course throughout my whole life, is just a representation of my opinions. And speaking of opinions, I love the quote that Roshi Yoku from ZCLA put in the article she had called Hold to the Center in the Tricycle magazine from our teacher, Bernie Glassman's teacher of Meizumi Roshi. She said, he often said to her, I don't ask you to give up your ideas, but at least set them aside for a while. You can always pick them up later. So let's start off with that kind of intention. And to dive into this, I think I want to read the statement that we did post, but I think it warrants reflecting again together on. It's the statement that ZPI put out at the end of, right after the 2016 election. It was really crafted by Bernie and really represents his view of the one body and all of its manifestations. The recent election in the United States has had a deep impact, not just on Americans, but on many around the world. It has stoked shock, fear, upset, and anger in many, and relief, hope, and gladness in others. The big difference is how we feel. The big differences in how we feel reflect the diversity of people, their karmas, values, and vision. That difference is no problem. Holding these differences while seeking common ground and taking action is the challenge facing us now. This is the best time to invoke the three tenets and bring forth the mind of not knowing, bearing witness, and a response grounded in those tenets, rather than knowing what to fear and expect, which sows fears of confusion, outrage, and victimhood. Let's cultivate not knowing, letting go of preconceptions and certainties. Please use whatever practice grounds you in this space, be it meditation, mindfulness, ceremony, or prayer. Bear witness to what arises, both outside and inside, and then honor the response that naturally comes forth from this present moment. 4 years later, the US is even more polarized, in my opinion. And so I find that it's important to look at politics, and can politics be part of our spiritual practice? And it's interesting because duality defines the relative reality, and in Buddhism we speak of the relative reality and the absolute reality. Duality is what defines the relative reality, but that duality is not always easy to see. But in politics, the poles are in stark contrast. This duality is in our face every day, and it should be easy to see, but yet it escapes us. It escapes our awareness. I do want to talk about the irony of speaking of the duality of the relative and then the absolute reality in contrast to the relative reality, and that itself is a duality, isn't it? So let's remember that that is our way of expressing that challenge, and only by bringing those two together, which I think is addressed so well in many sutras, but the one that comes to mind is the Heart Sutra, where we don't really have words that can describe what that is when those are brought together, but we can sort of point to it. So I did want to acknowledge that. And politics, you know, there's a bumper sticker that I remember seeing, I see in the South a lot, I don't see here in Colorado much, but occasionally, which is, what would Christ do? So I'll turn that around a little bit and ask, what would Buddha do in these days? And it's interesting, I had a chance to spend a lot of time with Stephen Batchelor on a pilgrimage in India, going through the different points of areas of Buddha's life. And he was working on a book at the time about the actual history of Buddha's life. And it turns out, and I don't remember, I don't think he actually wrote a book just on that, but in several of his books he makes reference to it. But the Buddha actually spent time negotiating between kingdoms. There were a lot of kingdoms in that area of the world, and he was actually engaged in politics, recognizing that reality was a necessary way of working towards reducing suffering. And for me, until 2013, I was a committed, apolitical, politically agnostic person. To be honest, the system disgusted me. I'm not proud to say that, but I'm just recognizing that was my view. I went about my life certainly with different ideas about politicians and things, but while I voted every election, I always took that as a responsibility. I didn't really didn't have a sense of being, carrying a responsibility as a citizen. I just went through my life, trying to advance my career and collect my toys and do the thing that we do when we're just living our householder lives. And I want to shift now just to back to Bernie for a second and remind us all that he gave us a very important perspective, I think, in terms of distilling down the multitude of commentaries and things and teachings in the Dharma to the essence of what is enlightenment for him. And he described enlightenment as the recognition of the one body, recognition of our interbeing, our interconnectedness with all. Oops. Sorry, Scotland calls. And he would describe it that we have different layers and we can develop deeper levels of enlightenment as we recognize that one body. And his first example is one I think we can all identify with this, which is we can recognize our own one body. We can see our right hand and our left hand are different, but they're all part of the same body. And our left hand doesn't think, oh, if my right hand gets cut, oh, I'm going to be a great person. Look at me. I'm compassionate. I'm going to take care of that right hand. And should not be held in high esteem because I'm being helpful. No, it doesn't think about it. It just recognizes the oneness and just deals with it in that sense that sort of describes love. True love connects, heals, does the best it can. And Bernie would describe, we all have that level of enlightenment, pretty much. If we didn't have that level of enlightenment, that's sort of one of the definitions of being deluded or being a little bit mentally unstable if you didn't recognize your own one body. The trick is to step past that and recognize that true interconnectedness, that we are all part of the same body. Republicans, Democrats, progressives, socialists, libertarians, all part of the same body.